Hi, John Farrell with the Farrell Law Firm. Today we're going to be talking about the dismissal of the lawsuit between Hans Niemann and Magnus Carlsen. But first, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. We put out new videos every Tuesday and Friday, and make sure you hit the like button because every like helps. All right, John Farrell with the Farrell Law Firm. To tell you a little bit about myself, I am the author of Estate Planning for the Modern Family, and I was recently voted one of the top 3 lawyers here in Cobb County, Georgia, along with the law firm being voted one of the top 3 law firms here in Cobb County, Georgia. Now today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. You know, from time to time I will provide commentary on certain entertainment, legal news. Well, today there was an announcement, or the announcement happened yesterday, regarding the Hans Niemann versus Magnus Carlsen and others lawsuit being dismissed. For those of you who might know or might not know, I enjoy chess. I'm probably the worst chess player in the world, but I enjoy it, and I enjoy watching some of the top players participate, and just I'm always amazed at how their minds work. Well, this lawsuit stems from a game that occurred back in September of 2022. Hans Niemann is an American grandmaster at chess. He was playing a game against Magnus Carlsen, who happens to be the #1 rated player in the world. Many people believe that Magnus is perhaps the greatest chess player of all time. Magnus is able to do things on the chessboard that just other people are just not able to do. Well, they were participating in a tournament and ended up being paired against each other. Magnus was playing with the white pieces, Hans was playing with the black pieces. At the end, Hans beat Magnus, and after that, Magnus withdrew from the tournament. And so it was kind of odd at the time that Magnus would do that. It was sort of speculative as to why he would do that. Well, later on, a few weeks later, they end up playing against each other again. This time, it was over the internet or online. The first game was just them sitting in front of each other across from a physical chessboard known as classical chess. The second time they were playing online, Magnus made one move, turned off his webcam, and forfeited the game. Later on, Magnus posted some cryptic texts or emails or posts. Ultimately, Hans later the next month filed a defamation lawsuit against Magnus and other people, saying that he had been defamed. Ultimately, the accusations were that Magnus called him a cheater, and as a consequence, he's been defamed because of that. Well, yesterday, the Wall Street Journal reported that that lawsuit had been dismissed, but there are things that people are missing about the dismissal that I wanted to bring to your attention. Number one, the lawsuit was dismissed in a couple of different ways. And so there are 2 ways that you can dismiss a lawsuit. You can dismiss it with prejudice, or you can dismiss it without prejudice. Now, when a case is dismissed with prejudice, it means that those claims cannot be brought again. Instances where a claim might be dismissed with prejudice might be, for example, if the lawsuit was ultimately settled. Normally the person who is paying the money in the settlement will say, well, this needs to be dismissed with prejudice so that you can't bring this claim again to me later on, even though I'm paying you a bunch of money now. So those claims get dismissed with prejudice so that the person paying the money can at least rest knowing that those claims are not going to be brought again. Another example when a case might be dismissed with prejudice is perhaps if the case is being filed over and over and over again, and it just ends up being harassment at some point. You know, the court might dismiss that case with prejudice so that it can't be brought again because it just keeps getting brought over and over and over again. So that's another example of where a case might be dismissed with prejudice. Sometimes, perhaps even in this case, the court dismissed part of Hans Niemann's lawsuit with prejudice, perhaps because they felt that the claims had no merit and that there was just nothing there, so they shouldn't be brought again. So some of the claims were dismissed with prejudice. Now, the other claims, however, were dismissed without prejudice. And what that means is that those claims can be brought again. The reason that the court dismissed those claims without prejudice is because they claimed they did not have jurisdiction to even hear those claims. This was a federal lawsuit that Hans brought against Magnus and the other individuals. It was brought in federal court. The federal court said these are not federal claims, these are state claims. And so they dismissed it without prejudice, allowing Hans the opportunity to raise this lawsuit again. In fact, I believe there was some reporting in the Wall Street Journal that the lawyers representing Hans indicated, yeah, we are going to bring this again. It's not a federal claim, but we're going to bring them in state court. So perhaps it is their intention to bring these claims in state court against Magnus and the other individuals, because the federal court claimed that they are state claims, and Hans' lawyers tend to indicate that they want to bring these cases in state court. So this may not be the last that we hear from the Hans Niemann versus Magnus Carlsen lawsuit. Now let me tell you, I like both of these players. I like Hans Niemann. I like Magnus Carlsen. I like watching them play. It is not impossible that Magnus would lose a classical game of chess. He's lost other classical games of chess before. Magnus happens to be the #1 rated player in the world, but Hans himself, I believe in June of 2023, was ranked at 36. I mean, imagine being the 36th best player of chess in the world when there are billions and billions of people who play chess. I mean, that is quite a remarkable feat. So I don't think it would be just unusual that Magnus would lose to someone of that pedigree. What made it a little bit unusual, of course, is that Magnus was playing with the white pieces, and it got to an end game, and Magnus just simply lost the end game, which he just normally doesn't do. And perhaps he just had a very bad game. Ultimately, he ended up losing, withdrew from the tournament, even though he ended up on an online game against Hans later. He refused to play, or he made one move and then forfeited. Ultimately, I like both of these players. I love watching Magnus play. I like watching Hans play. I think they're both very good players. And hopefully this will come to some resolution, and I hope they both find peace with whatever this issue tends to bring for them. All right, so that is really all that we have for today. Again, the federal lawsuit was dismissed. It was dismissed partially with prejudice, meaning those claims can't be brought again. But the other claims were dismissed without prejudice, means that we may see part 2 of this lawsuit just in state court instead of federal court. All right, so that's all that we have to go over today. Again, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. We put out new videos every Tuesday and Friday, and make sure that you hit the like button, because every like helps.